Hi, I'm Bob Radocy.
I'm Debi Latour.
We're here with some episodes about empowering people, empowering prosthetics.
And our aim is to empower persons with hand absence or impairments.
And we're going to get into episode 3 of our series. This episode is going to talk about technology, the sockets and the interface that make up a prosthesis. And they are, in fact, the most important part of the prosthesis, because without a good interface, you really can't perform with a prosthesis no matter what you have on the end of it. I've been involved with prosthetics for probably over 50 years. I was involved in a car wreck when I was a young man in college and wound up needing a prosthesis, got into developing some prosthetics myself and then starting a company and TRS many years ago. Deb's approach, or Deb's introduction into prosthetics, was a little bit different.
Sure, I was born without my hand, so I have well over 60 years of prosthetic experience. I received my first prosthesis at the age of 1, and that was a passive device. And then my second one I received at about the age of 2, and that was a body power prosthesis. So I've worn prosthetic devices my whole entire life. In addition to that, I became an occupational therapist 45 years ago, and I'm very involved with prosthetic rehabilitation and also research and development into new devices.
So we want to talk again, sockets and interface, concepts, designs. Prostheses have been made for hundreds, possibly thousands of years. People made them out of wood, and they just carved out a socket that they put the limb into. People who are missing their legs, put a pole on the end of it, a peg leg. Concepts and sockets have evolved over the years from being wood sockets, made of leather, made of fabric. But they've evolved significantly, and certainly on from the 50s on. And we have a lot of new materials, new ways of fabricating. And people have really looked very deeply and intimately at the structure of the bones of the arm, etc., so that they can understand how to create the best suspension. Prostheses aren't physically attached to your bone. Some are, they call them osseointegration. We're not going to talk about those right now. But the prostheses that Deb and I are wearing fit around, they're external fit prostheses. They fit over the soft tissue and around the bone prominences that you have on your arm or whatever part of the anatomy you have. So they have to be very comfortable, they have to be very intimately fit, and they're all custom made. There's no off-the-shelf real prostheses that you're going to find that work very well if you want to be if you want to perform well with a prosthesis. So you want to start with describing the very simple type of prostheses that existed in the past?
Sure. Many of the prostheses that have been developed in the past really consist of a very simple cup-like shape that fits over the residual limb. This has evolved so that now there are indentations that, instead of just being a cup shape, we have configurations that actually cup our anatomy and help to hold it on, so that, try to pull my arm off. See if you can do it. I know you're a strong guy. Now, so this is a well-suspended socket because you can't pull it off. It fits me well. And that's the aim of most upper limb prosthetists, to be able to provide a well-fitting socket so that the wearer is comfortable and can use it for extended amounts of time.
Yeah, the typical original socket like that would be very difficult to keep on. So it was held on mostly with use of harnesses, harnesses and straps and things like that, because there was really nothing for that prosthesis to grasp onto. And if you got sweaty or whatever, that pulling motion on the end would destabilize that prosthesis and it came off. So what Deb was talking about is what they evolved and called a self-suspending, or supra, S-U-P-R-A, supracondylar prosthesis. And a supracondylar prosthesis has a lot of evolution as well. I'm going to show you one here that's fairly simple. This is a rigid outer shell prosthesis, and this one uses an inner padded liner. This prosthesis is a supracondylar, self-suspending prosthesis, much like the one that I'm wearing that I'll show you. This one has no adjustability. It was built very specifically to slip my arm into. Fit very well, but it's a type of technology that's been mostly replaced by even more improved technology right now. These kinds of technologies, also one of the things that we've talked about is they've augmented suspension. Deb, you want to describe what this is?
Yeah, this is a pin lock liner. It can roll onto the person's residual limb, so usually it's rolled down, kind of like this, a little more, and the person can fit it over their residual limb.
They back roll it.
And then back roll it on, and then this pin fits into the base of the socket.
In many cases you can't see it, but underneath the skin of this prosthesis, there's a little button and a fixture inside this arm. So this sleeve, once I don it on my arm, I can slide down into this prosthesis, and this pin interlocks down inside this arm, so to prevent it from preventing my arm from coming out. So this literally would slip down into this with my arm in it like that. So you'd have basically something like that, interlocking, and that helps that suspension significantly. People are still using this type of technology. It's far better than just a simple socket. It has a lot better suspension, and this is held on by traction, just skin traction, all of the friction that you have between this material, which is a silicone, and your skin.
It's important to note that even though we're showing you samples of devices, there are many more available and even made out of different materials. For example, many of the pin lock liners now are very, very soft and more like a fabric with a silicone liner. So they're thicker, they offer cushion, and they're just a little different and serve a different purpose.
But it's just an advancement in the way that prostheses are held on your arm, and they're still very available and they're still used widely, and they just augment that suspension and give you greater stability and better safety in your arm.
While we're talking about materials that devices are made out of, many of my prostheses up until about maybe 7-10 years ago were all hard, firm sockets made out of a resin material. They were shaved so that they would feel somewhat soft in terms of their smoothness, but they were still hard. Now, with the evolution of different technologies, we can use silicone for sockets. So on all of my prostheses, I have soft silicone sockets. So you can see just by virtue of how I'm pushing on it, I can move it and roll it. It's held securely in the interface of the shell of my prosthesis. But in addition to this beautiful soft silicone that feels great on my skin, I have air bladders in there. So I'm just gonna see if it's hard because it's black. But if I pump those up, you can see that there's a little pillows, air pillows that emerge right around the brim of the socket. And those
help grasp her elbow bones.
Exactly.
They keep her in that
epicondyles.
socket.
Right.
The epicondyles.
They grasp at the epicondyles and help to hold this prosthesis on. And the other feature that's nice about it is that if I make those air bladders too tight or need to change, if the volume of my residual limb changes at all, I can adjust accordingly by just emitting a little air, letting some of the air release go out, or if it's too loose, I can pump it back up.
Here's another example of what Deb was referring to as the inner liner. So this is, in many cases years ago, prostheses just had a rigid shell that you had to deal with, and they might have had a partial liner like I showed you that was foam, but this is a complete inner silicone flexible liner, and it provides a lot of comfort and it provides suspension as well. Now, some other ways that prostheses have been held on is just with an external sleeve. These can be made of neoprene, they can be made out of rubber, and they're pulled on over your prosthesis up and onto your arm, and that helps you get some stability. That's a way sometimes to create some additional suspension for your prosthesis. It's kind of a secondary way of doing it. It's better to have a prosthesis which is self-suspending and doesn't require a lot of extra stuff, but people use external suspension sleeves for getting some extra stability from time to time. So I'd like to describe to you or illustrate to you another type of socket technology that's been evolving over the last decade or so, and more recently even in the last 5 years. It's an adjustable tension or adjustable pressure prosthesis. So you can look at this arm here and you can see this plate in the back. And this plate is actually a movable plate. It's controlled by cables. The cables are controlled by what is called, in this case, a BOA system. And a BOA system is a cable tensioning system that you may have seen on ski boots and other types of equipment. It's been used mostly in footwear, but it allows for this prosthesis and this panel. I can slip this prosthesis on when I push this knob in, and I can tighten it up. That panel is actually drawn in. And when it's drawn in, it captures the bones on the back of my elbow. So it helps lock me into this prosthesis. And people are experimenting with these designs more and more. It's just an advanced, state-of-the-art type of technology, being able to have a prosthesis that literally adjusts its tension and its volume. The arm I'm wearing is another version of that same thing, and I'm going to pull up the sleeve on my arm here and show you this. So this prosthesis also uses adjustable tension, but instead of creating a pressure bar back here, I'm going to pop off the side of this arm. This also has, in this case, a BOA control tensioning knob, but the way this arm works is a little bit different. My prosthesis has a rigid shell for strength, but I've got a soft, flexible inner liner that completely encapsulates my limb, but then I have these flexible brims. So the entire prosthesis is not rigid. And these flexible brims are controlled through these cables, and I can control the cables through this knob. So as I tension this cable, these brims of the prosthesis actually grasp around my elbow. So I can tighten my arm up. This arm won't possibly come off. It's on permanently until I want to release it. And then I release the knob, and then it loosens it up, and I can extract my arm out. That's not been true of typically other prostheses in the future. Most other prostheses you can slip out of under some particular range of motion or stuff. But with this new technology, this is pretty much state-of-the-art type adjustable prostheses. And this is very specific for the type of limb that I have, is short transradial, but they can also use these BOA's technologies to apply, if I had a longer limb, to apply pressure medially and laterally, to grab your arm this way if you had a longer arm behind the possible wrist bones you might have. Okay. There's a lot of ways to use this adjustable tension technology, so it's something really to pay attention to. It's really allows you to adjust the volume. You might get a little sweaty. You can tension up and increase the suspension that you have. So very important technology to be aware of. This is, in my opinion, this is where prostheses need to continue to go with this adjustable kind of technology, whether it be an air bladder, something that helps adjust and capture your limb in different ways.
Do you think that your community prosthetist, a generalist, would be able to provide that kind of device for you?
You know, it's a great question, Debbie, and it's something we want to make sure we communicate to you, because there's many prosthetists in the country, and many of them are very, very exceptionally good. But when it comes to upper limb prosthetics, there's only a slice of prosthetists around the country that what are referred to as upper extremity specialists. And they're the people that you want to work with. Mm-hmm. Those women or men that are out there have been trained, and they've done lots of arms. So if you're going to go out and get an arm made, you want to find an upper extremity specialist. You don't want somebody that builds one arm every couple years or hadn't built an arm for the last 10 years. Mm-hmm. You want to find someone that's been building upper limb prostheses on a regular basis, because they're going to be aware of the current technology, and they're just going to have done it more. They know how to do it better. Mm-hmm. So finding combinations, hybrid designs. So all of these technologies can be mixed and matched. A roll-on liner can be used with a self-suspending socket. It can be used with an adjustable tension prosthesis. So many of these technologies complement each other. So there's not one that's necessarily best for everyone. Depending on your circumstance, depending on your anatomy, working with your prosthetic professional, that upper extremity specialist, you're going to determine what's the best route to go to give you the prosthesis that has the right socket, the right interface that meets your needs. You might be a 280-pound guy that needs to do construction work. Your needs are going to be different, possibly, than someone who is a homemaker, or someone who's a teacher, or never gets out and does a lot of real rigorous type of upper body work.
Absolutely. Or a teacher who's standing in front of a group of kids and doesn't want a prosthesis that attracts attention, or that limits her ability, or takes away from the information she or he is trying to convey.
So let's talk a little bit more as we get down into the weeds about this. So here you are, you're going to see your prosthetist, and they do a casting, most of them, of your limb. They actually do an intimate feel, put on a plaster cast to get an actual negative of what your arm looks like. And it's an intimate process, and they do it well, but it allows them to feel the bone prominences and get them the data and information they need and the physical model of what your arm looks like. Then they take that and then they manipulate it. They add in layers of certain material to give them room to do what they need to do to make that arm fit properly. But one of the most important things you always want to have your prosthetist do, and you want to insist on it, is you want to have a test socket. Maybe more than one test socket. And most every good prosthetist is going to do it, but it's important to be aware of it. So they're going to make you a clear socket typically, or something that's translucent, and it's not going to be the entire prosthesis, it's just going to be that interface itself, and you're going to be able to put it on. And at that point, it's really incredibly important for you to communicate what that feels like, because if there's pressure points, if it's too tight in a particular area of that arm, you need to communicate that, because at that level is when it can be changed. And you need to put that socket under duress. You need to load it. You need to put pressure on it. You need to move it around and put it not just statically. You need to put dynamic load against it and see what it feels like, simulating what it might be like when you have an entire prosthesis made.
And this process might take more than 5 minutes. In fact, it should. If you have a prosthetist who's putting the test socket on and only having you try it for a few minutes, that's not enough. As Bob said, you want to put it under duress. You want to put it through the paces of what your daily life is like. Try to get to know your body and your residual limb. There might be times of the day when you perceive that your residual limb is more prone to swelling or edema, or when it's when your bony prominences might protrude a little bit more. We're all different. So get to know your body and be able to speak up about how that socket fits. Sometimes you might be allowed to bring that socket home for a day or two to be able to wear it for a full 8 hours. The goal for most prosthetists and most users is that we would be able to tolerate wearing our prosthesis, which really means tolerate a residual limb wearing that socket, for a good 8-hour day, sometimes more.
Yeah,
How long do you wear yours?
I wear my prosthesis all the time except for bathing and sleeping. It's on. I feel kind of naked without my prosthesis. I've worn one for such a long time. Now that's not true for everyone, but for me,
Right.
I like having a prosthesis on. I feel incomplete without one. So take that test socket, put a lot of pressure on it. If you can, try to do a push-up type of load on it. Lean against the wall, torque it, rotate it. And if it bites into your condyles, if it hurts at all, if you get any kind of pressure points, they've got to be removed. They've got to change that socket. They've got to push it out, give you a little bit more room. Or it might be too sloppy. If it's too sloppy, they need to tighten it up, because they're going to use that test socket as the final model to build your definitive prosthesis. So what you get in your test socket will be exactly replicated in your final prosthesis. So all of these things: support body weight, dynamic testing, and move your arm through a wide range of motion. Flex your arm completely, extend it, load it, pressure on the medial side, pressure on the lateral side, lift, push up on it. What does it feel like? And if you do that and you go through all of that, you're going to be much more assured that, and it fits well, you're going to be much more assured that your final product is going to perform the way that you want it to.
Thank you for listening to episode 3. Episode 4 upcoming is going to be more talk about technology, where we get into the terminal devices and all of their differences and nuances.
Yeah, I'm Bob Radocy.
And I'm Debi Latour. You can reach out to us at these email addresses. And remember that, Bob, this presentation is brought to you through Instinctive Inventions, LLC.
And Single-Handed Solutions.
Thank you.
See you next time.